Hello everybody. In this screencast we're going to look at how you read data from Firebase real-time database. So you look here at the documentation, you'll see that they have read and write data. So we already looked at how you write data. It's very straightforward. So let's have a look and see. So obviously we talked about the reference, the hierarchical, how hierarchical this data is. And then the basic write operations can be used to use the set value. We used update value, right? And then you could see that you could say it's user ID, set value, username. Now, to read data from Firebase, it's a real-time database. So basically, to read data, you have to point it to somewhere in the database, basically the path that you want, the reference that you want to read data at. And then you set up something called an observer. So basically, that observer is either when the data changes, I want to know, or I want to read it for only one time. So basically, you could see here, there is a read once. If you want to read the data once, you set the observer using observe single event, right? And you read it from there, right? So basically, this is if you read it. Now, the other interesting part is that you could tell it that you want to observe and continuously observe. So whenever the data changes, you're going to get some data. Right. So basically, this receives the snapshot. So the data that comes back is called a snapshot of the data, and that enables you also to traverse its children and so on. Okay, cool. So basically, let's see how do we do this. You know, it's also very simple, but let's see how do we do this. So this is the console, just for reference, so that we see what we are looking at here. Here's my data, right? Let's say I want to read the address field. So how do we do that? So basically, this is the code that we had from before. This was the write code, how to write data. I need the reference, which is the root, and then I go here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to info. So basically, I'll say root ref.child, and it's called info, right? Dot, and then you could say observe. Okay, so basically, I want to observe. Okay, and basically here we are, and the event type, which is you click on, you put dot and you say value. Okay, and then it will give you a snapshot. It's actually going to give you a snapshot. So basically that's gonna go to info, right? Info has all these children, right? So basically I could go in and say if snapshot is not equal to nil, this means that there is data there, right? Else, I'll say print. I will say that there is no data. No data. Okay, and then here, otherwise, we are here, right? I want to get the value. So snapshot is what? Represents the data at info. What is the data at info? Is all of these things. So basically, I want to get the data at, say, address. Okay, so how would I do that? I could say snapshot dot child, okay, has a child. You could check to see if it has a child or no. Okay, if it has a child or no, or you could do you could get the snapshot of a child, right? So I need a snapshot of a child, okay, which is going to be the path is address and then dot value. Value will get you the value, which is Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, so what I could do to protect all of this, I could say if snapshot dot has a child, and it's called address, right? If it has address, and I'm gonna get the address, I could say let address equals this, right? So basically, let the address to be equal to this, and I'm just going to print address. Okay, I could say the address is okay. So basically what we did is that you set up an observer to the value, and then you check to see if the snapshot is not null. And then basically what happens is that you check to see if the snapshot, which is the data at this node, so basically this is the snapshot that you're going to receive, check to see if it has a child, and that child is called address. So basically in the snapshot, does it have a child snapshot called address, right? So basically that's what we are checking here to see if it has a child called address. If yes, then we go here and get the snapshot of that child and then get its value. Basically the value, and we could say as string. So basically I can do that, and then it's a string. Okay, so basically I want to change it to a string, and we go from there. So now we run it. So basically I just set up an observer on the info node. Okay, so whenever the info node changes, you should see here the address is Charlotte, North Carolina. Right. Notice that if I change that value, so let's say I'll just scroll a little bit up so that you could see the log also here. Now if I change that value, let's say I change it to North Carolina, USA. Right, see, when I click on enter, it actually, the code, because I changed the value, the observer gets notified that the data has changed, and it gets you the snapshot again, and we repeat this code again. Now if I go here and I could just say in the world, okay, so US indoor, and here we go. Right. Interestingly, the observer, we have it set up at the info level. See, the observer is at root child info, right? So anything in the info changes, this code is still going to be re-executed. So let's change the date to 30. You could see that it did change. It did call the observer again. So basically, this what makes it real time, is that whenever the data changes, you can set up these observers, and you can set them up on a lot of devices, and then this enables these devices to talk to one another. So whenever one of these devices changes the data, others who are waiting or have an observer set up on that data get notified. Okay, so basically you have here age is 33. I changed it to say 55. When I click on enter, you could see that it's printing here. This means that this app is calling, this observer is being called, this block executes again. Okay, very nice. So it's actually on changing the data, or if you just even delete, if we delete the name, see, if I deleted the name, you could see it did run again. Whenever this data changes, whatever, if it changes, you would receive this kind of notification. So basically, if you change the address to say Charlotte, North Carolina, you could see here that the address is changed to Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, it takes a little bit of time to get used to this, but this is how you read data from Firebase. You just set up an observer, gets you the data. Now, what if you just want to receive this data only once? So the observer is going to continuously give you this data, right? Even if it changes. What if you just need a snapshot of the data right now, and you don't want to be notified when the data changes? There's another root.ref and say child. Okay, and we set it up to info, right? And then there is observer, and then there is a single event observer. Okay, observe a single event. Boom, and you could say dot value, and the same story. This will only happen once. Okay, so I'll just copy the same code here that we have here to here, right? And I will say that this is the observe single value. I'll just call it observe single value. This will execute only once. Okay, now this one is the observe. Okay, so this one is the observe. You can have as many as you want observers, right? So I have an observer that is going to observe this by value, and then this one is a single event. Okay, the single event you'll see will only be called once. Run it again. Okay, so you could see that we have the observer, the observe one, which is this one, it did print, and then the observe single value also got printed. Now let's change the address, or change anything in that. Change anything in that info node. Let's say we change the age to say 66. Press enter. You could see that the single one didn't get printed. Only the observe one got printed. The observe one is continuously observing it. This one is only single time. It will only be called a single time. Okay, so now you can add another node, for example, let's say a test node, and we say that this is ABC, add, and you could see that the other one gets called, but the single event one is only called once. So if you just need a snapshot of the data now and you don't care about when it gets updated, then you will use this observe single event. If you want a continuous update whenever the data changes, updated changes or any alteration to that node, delete a record. So if you delete a record, so let's say we delete this, I click on the X here, I deleted it, you could see it get called again. Okay, so now you could see how you use the observe and observe single event. I hope this was useful. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.